Hi folks, Mr. Long here. This is screencast number 2 of 3 for completing the square. The first one went over all the skills and the concepts you need to be able to complete the square for solving quadratic equations. Now we're actually going to do it. Now we're going to solve a fairly simple one in the first case, and hopefully with this one you look it over, take notes and things, and then when we get into more difficult ones later on, you'll be able to connect it to this simpler one. Okay, so the first thing we need to know about completing the square is the idea is that you're going to get the you're going to get the squared and the x terms on the left side and constants on the right side. So what we need to do here is we need to add 15 to both sides initially, right, to get rid of that negative 15. So we're going to have x squared minus 2x equal to 15, okay, because I added 15 to both sides. Now, as we look at this, that's not, I can't possibly complete the square. So what I'm going to have to do is, what do I need to do to complete the square? Well, what we learned in the first video is that in this box right here is going to be b over 2, and in this box here is also going to be b over 2. The b value is negative 2, so b over 2 is negative 2 over 2, which is negative 1x, negative 1x. Okay, and now we can figure out what the side lengths are of that square. So the side length of that square are going to be x here, minus 1 here, minus 1 here. And then in this box right here is where I literally have to complete a square. Okay, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm completing a square to make it into a perfect square. So if I look at it, it's going to be this negative 1 multiplied by this negative 1 in this box here. So negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. So that's positive 1, and that literally completes the square. So I've got to add 1 there to make it a perfect square. But the thing is, can I add 1 to just one side, or do I have to add it to both? Well, I'd have to add it to both. So I'm going to add 1 to both sides. And that's going to leave me with x squared minus 2x plus 1 equals 15 plus 1 is 16. And what I can do now is I definitely have a perfect square right here. And because if you look, I've got x squared minus 2x plus 1 right there, which is also the same thing as x minus 1 multiplied by x minus 1, or x minus 1 squared. So let's represent both the left and the right side with squares. So this is going to be x minus 1 squared. It's going to equal, well, what's the square root of 16? It's 4. But wait a second. Is it only 4 that squares to get 16? Or is it plus and minus 4? Yeah, it's plus and minus 4. Okay, so once again, I've got squares now on both sides. Now I can just start solving. I've completed the square. That process is done. The square is complete. Now I need to start doing inverse operations. Well, I have to get rid of the squaring first. So I square root both sides. X minus 1 will equal plus and minus 4. Okay, the next thing I need to do now is to look at both negative solution and the positive solution. So before I do that, though, of course, I'm going to have to add 1 on both sides, and what that's for is this minus 1 here, right? I have to add 1 to both sides, so I'm going to do that. Okay, so let's go back to this. So I'm adding 1 to both sides to begin. So x1 or z1 will equal that 1. And then I'm going to do minus 4, which takes care of that minus. On this over here, x2 will equal, I still have the plus 1, right? Because I had to add 1 to both sides. And now this one is going to be plus 4. Okay, so x1 will equal minus 3. x2 will equal 5. Okay, so those are the two solutions. And the original equation, if you remember, was x squared, and it's going to be number 1 that was on your worksheet, minus 2x minus 15. Equals 0. And so that means that this and this, negative 3 and 5, are the solutions to that specific quadratic equation. Okay, and they would represent x-intercepts on the graph. And by the way, remember that that right there would be the x value of the vertex, right? Because it's the x value of the vertex plus or minus delta x. xv plus or minus delta x. Okay, so that right there is going to be x equals negative 1. Whoops, x equals negative 1. Okay, so you should rewind that if you need to, and look at the process again for completing the square, because the next couple are going to start getting into fractions, and it's going to be a little bit more complex. Okay, but definitely these are sort of these ones here that we just did are like the level 1, level 2. If you can do these ones, that's definitely level 2. As soon as you start getting into fractions and what I call radicals or square root signs, then you're into the level 3 and 4 for 11U. Okay, folks, so that's how you solve quadratic equations, by completing the square. Again, look it over again, make notes before you proceed.